For this lesson on page 8, we're going to talk about what an angle bisector is. So first, what does it mean to bisect an angle? It means that if you're bisecting an angle, you're dividing an angle into two equal or congruent parts. So an angle bisector is essentially, think of it informally as the knife. If a ray is an angle bisector, then it divides the angle into two congruent angles. And if a ray, and the converse would also be true, so if a ray divides the angle into two congruent angles, then our conclusion is that it's the angle bisector. So in our picture above, AD is what we would consider the angle bisector. Okay, we can see that it divides the angle BAC into two congruent angles. So angle BAD is congruent to angle DAC. And that little arch that I just drew is a indication that the two angles are congruent to each other. So in example 3, we're not given a picture, so we'll go ahead and draw the given picture. So RT bisects QRS. So let's draw the angle QRS, R being the vertex. And then RT is a ray, so extending from the vertex. RT bisects QRS, so we can mark off the congruence. And then given that measure QRS, so the whole angle is equal to 60 degrees, what is our conclusion about QRT and TRS? Go ahead and fill in your answer. So good, your answer should have been 30 degrees. I'm going to ask that you hit pause and then try example number 4. So in example 4, you have angle JKL. JKL, where KM is a bisector. It bisects JKL. The measures of the two congruent angles are 2x plus 7. So here is one angle, and the other angle is 4x minus 41. Well, it really did give you a big hint in saying that it's congruent. So if they're congruent, they have equal measures. We set the two equal to each other and solve, isolate the variables, put together the variable expressions that have, so subtract 2x to the other side, and then add 41 to the other side, and we get 2x equals 48. Therefore, x is 24. And again, with geometry, we want to be cautious of what it is that the question is asking for. And they didn't ask for us to solve for x, they asked for us to find the measure of JKM. So we'd take that and plug it back into 2x plus 7 or 4x minus 41. And either way, we should get that our answer for the measure. So remember, when we're talking about an actual numeric value to the angle measure, we're going to stick the m in front of it. So JKM is equal to the measure of MKL, which is 55 degrees. So in geometry, we'll talk about eventually shapes like triangles and quadrilaterals that might be congruent to each other. So here, when they're asking us to name the congruent parts, these symbols that you see here are to indicate that the segments are congruent to each other, as opposed to these double marks right here means that those segments are congruent to each other. And lastly, the angles right here are congruent to each other. So if I were to list out all the congruent parts, I would say AB is congruent to AC according to the diagram. And this is just from what I can derive from the given diagram. So BD is congruent to DC is also given. And since the angles right here are marked as 90 degrees, we also know that they have equal measures. So angle ADB is congruent to angle ADC. And then finally, angle ABD is congruent to angle ACD. We won't go further into why those two triangles are congruent. Some of you may already make that conclusion and therefore know that the rest of the corresponding parts that I haven't named are also congruent, but we'll get to that in time. That's going to be the next unit. So for now, we're just working with the given diagram and just marking off the apparent congruencies. For example 6, find the measure of angle RST. So here we have a straight angle, and a straight angle, if we think about it in terms of a circle, if I drew the diameter across the circle, we know a circle is 360 degrees. So therefore, half of a circle, or half of a revolution, a straight angle is 180 degrees. So the entire angle here is 180 degrees. If I know RS, and we don't know what this dot here is, so I'll call it A, and down here we'll call this B. If we know that RSA is equal to 50 and it's congruent to this angle here, we can make some conclusions. Go ahead and pause the video and figure out what those missing angles are. So good, the congruent angle is 50 degrees over here, and then the angle RST, which is the one that they're asking us to find, the measure of our angle RST is 80 degrees.